The first thing that you need to do in this essay, or when preparing for this essay, is pick a cultural group or a group of people that interests you. So you're going to look at people, a cultural group, an identity group that interests you. Now, they don't have to be necessarily from any of the final 3 modules in the unit where we discussed gender, race, and class. Now, of course, you can pick groups that would fall into those 3 broad categories, but there's absolutely no requirement to at all. All of the concepts that we've spoken about in the final 3 modules, although they were applied to particular cultural groups, can really be used to talk about the underlying ideology of media representations that refer to anyone. So you can be creative, selective, choose a group of people, an identity group that interests you. And you can be as broad or as specific as you like. So you might want to choose quite a broad category, such as women, or focus that down a little bit more to talk about Asian women. You might want to talk about young people or young Muslim people to focus things a little more. If you have any doubts about the group that you want to pick, just ask your tutor or ask me as the unit coordinator. That's the easiest way to clarify any doubts that you might have. Now, the group that you pick may in fact be influenced by the texts that you choose. So again, pick 2 texts that interest you. And if it's in the media, it's a text. So one of the questions, or one of the issues that a lot of people have when they're starting out with this assignment is, oh, what do I choose? What sort of text do I choose? Choose whatever you want. That probably doesn't make it any easier for you. Perhaps it makes it more difficult to choose. But you can choose a TV or a streaming show, a film, an advertisement, a news article, a meme, a YouTube video, well, whatever interests you, and you can find 2 examples that relate to a particular cultural group. And once again, if you're in doubt, ask your tutor. You know, realistically, if it's mediatized in some way, then it'll be okay. Pick texts that are similar enough to allow comparison, but are different enough to provide contrasts. So for argument's sake, if you were picking women and you wanted to focus on women in advertising, or how women are represented in advertising, in advertisements, you might want to pick 2 ads that advertise the same thing. For example, shoes. But then you might want to make them a little bit different to be able to pick up on some of the contrasts and some of the changes in the way women have been represented in advertising. And you could do that by picking a historical or a current example. You could, if you were choosing perhaps a news article, you could, or news media texts, you could pick texts that discuss the same issue or event. Or you could pick a digital and an analog example. So you could pick something that's from online media, or you could pick a print or broadcast example. So balance similarity and difference, really just to give you enough to write about. Now, realistically, based on what all of us, myself and the tutors, saw in the first assignment, very few of you will have difficulty with writing in depth. So that's something important to think about. And bearing that in mind, bearing that idea that if you've thought about things over the course of the semester, you should have no trouble writing 2,000 words. Indeed, you'll probably struggle to keep it to 2,000 words. I'm suggesting this three-part structure for beginning to think about your essay. Now, there's absolutely no requirement to follow this structure. And indeed, if you've already started the essay and you haven't done it this way, that's fine. But if you have started and you see this model here and you go and think that makes sense, then it's quite easy to adapt. So I'm proposing to get started a very simple three-step process. So first of all, once you've selected your texts, analyze each of them without any help from the online modules, the readings, the workshop materials, anything that we've done in the unit. Just put all that material to side for one moment. It'll be very difficult if you've kept up with things in the unit for ideas, concepts, not to creep in to what you're writing, and that's fine. But work out what each text is communicating in your own words and make some notes about that. So once you've done that, once you've gone through the text and analysed them in your own words, then bring in the unit materials. So bring in the online modules, the readings, the workshop materials to help you identify themes in your notes. So you can go through your notes and think that, oh, those ideas relate to stereotyping, those ideas relate to othering, those ideas relate to symbolic annihilation or the male gaze, depending, of course, on what text you're doing and what you're focusing on. So take your notes and line them up with the concepts that we've spoken about in the unit. And that will, once you put those two elements together, that will give you an overarching argument. That will give you a sense of what it is that you want to say about these texts. And once you've done that, then conduct additional research to support your argument. Now, the reason why we encourage you to do the additional research last is because we're asking you to go to the library and use the library catalogue, the online databases for journal articles, and you will find if you use very general search terms, you'll get an overwhelming number of results. So for argument's sake, if you're searching for gender and media or women and media, gender and representation, you'll probably get, and I say probably based on a quick search that I've just done, about 2,500 hits for any of those search terms. Now, of course, you're confronted with 2,500 hits. Your eyes are going to glaze over, you're going to get overwhelmed, and you're going to pick the first, 3, and they may not necessarily be the most relevant. So what we're asking you to do, or what we're suggesting that you do, is once you've got an idea of what it is that you're going to argue, for example, you might find that your texts focus on the male gaze very heavily, or that they focus on symbolic annihilation. Then you can refine your search terms to get more specific results. Now, there's still going to be probably quite a few hits that you get, but the more specific you are, the more likely you are to not get overwhelmed when you begin the research process. And don't forget, research is built in, additional research is built into the assessment criteria for this unit. So in this assignment, we're expecting you to read, watch, listen to more than the unit materials provided. So even though many of you did in the first assignment, the textual analysis, go outside the online modules, the readings, the workshop materials, we didn't expect you to. But in this assignment, we expect you to go and look at additional materials that are based on evidence and research, not just opinion. So we're looking for credible, scholarly research based on evidence, not just someone's opinion. And the best place to find those materials is the QUT library. I can't praise the QUT library enough. It's one of the best things about this university, hands down. The resources are magnificent, but more importantly, the people who work there are wonderful and they are extremely helpful and they love a challenge. So if you're struggling to find things or you want a bit of help finding things, approach some of the library staff and they will help you and get you on your way. But it's really important that for this assignment, you don't just use the first thing you Google. In fact, we probably want you to avoid Googling, using Google as your primary research tool here at all. Hit the library and we want you to find credible material that's based on evidence and research, okay? That's really important because it is factored into the assessment criteria. We want you to find things that people have said that are relevant to your argument and include it in your argument to enhance its credibility and impact.